Neil, are you on the line? Are you happy for us to start?
This is Julie Gishuru. You may start. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Hello, colleagues, journalists from the media, as well as any other communicators who may be joining us. My name is Wayne Musabayana, and I'm the head of communication at the African Union. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to this very special press briefing, which follows immediately after the historic launch of a $1.3 billion package and partnership between the MasterCard Foundation, the African Union, and the Africa CDC. We've just been through that, and I hope that some of you have been there. And we all heard those wonderful speeches and endorsements that came from our different heads of state, which included the President of the Republic of Rwanda, Mr. Paul Kagame, the President of the Republic of South Africa, who was represented by his health minister. We also heard from the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, as well as from the director of the Africa CDC and from the chief executive officer and president of MasterCard Foundation, Mr. Roy. Now, those latter two are here to answer your questions. But before we get into that, I just want to give them a minute each just to set the scene, the context, so before we go into the Q&A. So let me then start with Ms. Rita Roy of MasterCard Foundation. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Nguyen, and welcome to all of the journalists and communicators. For those of you who may not have been able to listen in, let me just quickly recap what this partnership is all about. We are aligning with the Africa CDC to work towards the very ambitious goal that the African Union has set to vaccinate at least 60% of the population by 2022. And so over the next 3 years, the MasterCard Foundation will be committing $1.3 billion in partnership with Africa CDC to save lives and to save livelihoods and to also hasten the economic recovery of the continent. This initiative will have 4 components. First, to acquire vaccines for at least 50 million people. Second, to support the deployment of vaccinations to millions more across the continent. Third, to prepare the workforce for vaccine manufacturing on the continent. And fourth, to strengthen the Africa CDC and to enable it to undertake this historic vaccination campaign across the continent. This work builds upon the progress which has been made by African leaders, by national vaccination programs, as well as the many contributions from international partners. COVAX, the World Health Organization, the European Commission, the support of the US government, and many others. So we are very excited to begin the hard work now of actually implementing this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rita Roy of the MasterCard Foundation. And of course, your statement was in the context of us needing to get to 60% vaccination across the continent, which amounts to people. All right, thank you for that. Let me bring in Dr. John Nkengasong, the director of the Africa CDC. Dr. John, you have the floor.
Thank you, Wayne. And Rita, let me once again express on behalf of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the African Union Commission and simply the people of Africa our sincere gratitude to the MasterCard Foundation for this historic move and gesture, which will be remembered when the history of this pandemic is written as a turning point and a defining moment in our fight against COVID-19 on the continent. We are here to celebrate the power of partnership that is geared towards saving lives and saving livelihoods. We've all, during this pandemic, acknowledged that Africa is lagging behind seriously in a battle against this very deadly disease, especially in the areas of vaccine rollout. As I indicated earlier, we have vaccinated less than 2% of our population, a population of 1.3 billion people. And this partnership will go a long way to begin to enable us and arm us to fight this pandemic from from the perspective of vaccination. Clear to everybody that the only way and pathway towards our economic recovery and reopening our schools is through vaccination. Vaccination, so that by the end of 2022, we should be able to immunize at least 60% of our population. Let me just conclude by putting this gigantic partnership in context. The real context of this is that we have to emerge from this pandemic looking better than we went in. That is building back better, bolder, and bigger. And as such, the continental leadership has embraced what we are calling a new public health order. A new public health order that speaks to workforce development, producing vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics on the continent, as well as strengthening our public health institutions. And if you heard Rita said, she touched on all those key elements of a new public health order for the continent that will enable us to emerge from this crisis looking better than we went into this crisis. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. John Kengasong, the director of the Africa CDC. But Dr. John also has another hat, and he is the WHO Special Envoy for Africa. So you can see that he spends a lot of time talking about how to safeguard the health of the continent. And one thing that really we would like journalists to take away from this press briefing is that slogan or title of saving lives, saving livelihoods, to accompany whatever we say about this partnership. All right, so now it's time for us to move on. We have a number of colleagues who are online and would like to ask their questions. What we will do is to ask you to just ask the one question that you have. And so let me start. I have a list here. Can we hear from Wambu, who is coming from Kenya? Wambu, good afternoon. Hello, Wambu.
Hello, good afternoon.
All right, please go ahead with your question. You are from the Standard of Kenya.
Yes, my question is to Rita Roy on the elements that the partnership it's on preparing, the workforce for the manufacturing of the vaccines in Africa. Can perhaps she elaborate this further? Are there any systems set in place already, or what's happening around that?
May I go ahead and respond? Thank you. Thank you for the question with regards to the workforce. So that you should know that the MasterCard Foundation began a few years ago with a program called Young Africa Works, and it specifically focuses on young people and employment on the continent. As part of this strategy, we will be looking at healthcare as an economic sector and healthcare as a sector which is a jobs destination for young people. So we have already in place a number of programs through our MasterCard Foundation Scholars Program, through our Workforce Development Program, where we are working with young people to skill them in a number of disciplines. So as we start to approach this whole sector on manufacturing, we will be looking at specific occupations and the skills that are required to build a vibrant, robust manufacturing sector. And that spans a number of occupations, everything from logistics, quality control, distribution, marketing. It's not just what goes inside a facility, but what surrounds the ecosystem in that facility. And so we will be taking a very comprehensive view and working with higher education institutions to also equip young people. I hope that helps in part answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rita. Let's move on now to Eunice, who is reaching out to us from NTV in Kenya. Good afternoon, Eunice. Hello, Eunice. All right, it seems like Eunice is having problems reaching out to us. Let's move on now and bring in Grum, who is with the capital in Ethiopia. Hello, Girum. Okay, it seems like Girum is also having problems, but I see coming through online, we have someone called Hadero. Hadero, please, can you introduce yourself and tell us the news organization that you're with, and then ask your one question and also specify to whom that question is directed.
Yeah, thank you. My name is
Hadero, you may go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with the Associated Press. I have two questions. So the foundation is buying Johnson & Johnson vaccines, but there's been issues with getting these vaccines out, particularly in South Africa, where over 1 million are being held because of contamination issues at a US factory. So Rita, I wanted to ask you, how confident are you that you'll get these vaccines out by August, which I believe is the month that the foundation said they're gonna plan to get the vaccines, delivered there. And Dr. John, how confident are you that that Johnson & Johnson will be able to meet the 220 million commitment that it has made?
Thank you for your question. With regards to the work of the foundation and the acquisition of vaccines, we are supporting the work that has already been done by AVAT, the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team. And as you've seen, that the first negotiation, which was concluded, was with Johnson & Johnson to purchase 220 million doses with the option of buying into 180 million doses. So we are confident that we will be able to acquire vaccines through this process as well, and work with the Africa CDC with increasing lots of doses coming onto the continent starting in August. I'll now turn to Dr. John to answer your second question.
No, thank you for the question. Beginning August, you begin to see doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine roll out. As we speak, it is just yesterday and today that I spent time sending note verbals, that is communications to member states, alerting them that the rollout of the vaccines will be, or the arrival of the vaccines is imminent. We remain positive and optimistic that the findings from the manufacturing site in the US will be resolved soon. As a matter of fact, we have remain hopeful that by the end of this week, things will be, we'll have some clarity and be able to move forward with that. So in short, we'll see early doses arriving in August, and then they will continue to escalate and increase over time and right up to next year. Remember, those 220 million of doses are not for only 2021. They will be spanned throughout 2021 and 2022.
Thank you very much to both Dr. John and Ms. Rita. Now we had someone here called Edna Muburi, who is with the New Vision in Uganda. Edna, are you there with us? Hello, Edna.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Please go ahead.
Okay, my question, and on the aspect of hastening economic recovery, you have said before that beyond mitigate the immediate shocks of the pandemic to the most vulnerable, we need to work on rebuilding communities and strengthening key sectors. In your opinion, which are those key sectors that we or our governments need to focus on? Thank you.
I think I heard the first part of her question. Was it about which sectors we should be focused on the rebuilding?
Edna?
Yes.
Can you just repeat your question so that Rita can understand it?
Okay, my question is, when we talk about hastening economic recovery, this is an intervention that's going to mitigate the immediate shocks of the pandemic, but you have said before that we have to work on rebuilding communities and strengthening key sectors. In your opinion, which are those key sectors that we should focus on for that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edna. I understand your question. So the MasterCard Foundation is working in a number of countries because we're implementing Young Africa Works, and we're working very, very closely with governments to understand their priorities. In several of the countries where we are present, governments have actually prioritized economic recovery plans. And in each of these countries, the sectors differ. based on areas of priority, sectors which are of investment destinations. I think underscoring all of this, there are two things for us which are very, very important. One is obviously building up the health sector in terms of looking at how we strengthen job creation, strengthen the robustness of health systems. The second is for us as a foundation is also enabling young people to continue their education and learning. And so fortifying the education sector is extremely important, and we're already taking a number of steps with our partners to strengthen digital learning, access to education, as well as education continuity. I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita. We have a question here that has come from Edelman, from Sana, who is with Edelman. And Sana says, what is the timeline that this partnership has in place for the local production of vaccines across the continent? So let me start with Dr. John for that one.
So the timeline is almost immediately in terms of the consultations with countries that have indicated their willingness to step up and contribute in the whole African vaccine manufacturing partnership. If you recall, on April the 12th and 13th, we had a very successful summit on African vaccine manufacturing, and President Tshisekedi launched the Partnership for African Vaccine Manufacturing. And since then, we have been having consultations with several countries that have expressed their interest to that. And all countries are welcome to participate in this. We're calling it an alliance, and where we are looking at the entire value chain for vaccine manufacturing on the continent. And this partnership will enable countries that are stepping up into the plate to say, look, I want to do that. I want to be a player in this space to actually begin to be supported. So I think will be unrolling on basis as countries come in. There will be more partners, I believe, that will join this initiative. If you recall, just 2-3 weeks ago, the European Union announced a $1.2 billion commitment to support the continent to actually advance the vaccine manufacturing on the continent. So all of these partnerships will be coordinated by the Africa CDC. So this will actually start almost immediately.
Thank you very much. It's good news to hear that it will start almost immediately. Let's try and go back to Girum, who is with the capital in Ethiopia. Girum, are you able to come through to us? Hello, Girum. Okay, it looks like Girum is still having a few challenges. Let's move on now to Dan Diamond, who is coming through live on this platform. Dan, good afternoon. Just tell us the agency that you're with and then ask your question.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I'm Dan Diamond of the Washington Post in Washington, D.C. And can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you. My question is for Dr. Nkengasong. Looking at the G7 summit in Britain this week, the global response to coronavirus will be front and center as global leaders discuss how best to boost aid around the world. What sorts of commitments would you like to see come out of the G7 this week?
That's a very good question. I mean, there are two commitments that I would like to see come out of this summit. One is to recognize that the only way to win this battle against the pandemic is global cooperation and solidarity, including very deliberate commitment to supporting developing countries and Africa to win the battle. So that means two things. One is to redistribute those excess doses of vaccines that are out there immediately so that we can put it in the arms of people in Africa, and that will enable us to get to our 60%. I think we have to solve the problem at hand first. Then second is to work with Africa and other parts of the world to begin to decentralize and regionalize our ability to manufacture what are called health security commodities, i.e. vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics, such that the next time we are challenged universally as a planet with such a pandemic, and which experts all say we will have another pandemic, we should be able to go full scale from the region and through a coordinated mechanism to address this. So those are my two key messages to the G7 meeting there, in such a manner that it is not excluded, and I'll actually make an appeal that the G7 launched a coordinated effort such as the Global Fund, where that was launched in 2001, and it actually became a game changer in the way in which we fought HIV/AIDS. I think this is the most severe crisis of our time, and history will remember us if we do the right things and do it quickly.
Thank you very much. We have a question
word.
coming from Rita. You want to say something?
Yes, I'm so sorry to interrupt. If I may add a word to Mr. Diamond's question. I completely endorse what Dr. Kangasong has said, and I just want to add one more thing, which I hope the G7 will think about. Dr. Kangasong spoke about what is immediate. I also would hope that the leaders would consider something for the long term, which is to invest in public health institutions, because in times of crisis, we look to these institutions to lead us and to help guide us through difficult moments, just as what Dr. Kangasong is doing so ably at the Africa CDC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are looking at an immediate and a long-term approach when we talk at that very important meeting of the G7. So thank you very much both. We now have a question that is coming from All Africa. And the question, or rather they start with a statement. In the announcement this morning, all dignitaries mentioned the building of vaccine manufacturing capacity on the continent. Can we get more specifics of what this entails? Will a major manufacturing site be built, or will it be completely decentralized? So I'll start with Dr. John, because I know that you responded to this very same issue on Thursday.
Yes, there will be a coordinated approach, which we at Africa CDC and the African Union are moving forward with, developing a kind of a framework on how we should coordinate our efforts across the continent to manufacture vaccines. So there will be a coordinated approach. No country will be excluded. There are some frontline countries that have already said they want to manufacture vaccines. Rwanda has expressed a strong interest during the summit, the vaccine summit last month, or in April. President Kagame expressly mentioned that Rwanda was interested to look at messenger RNA manufacturing. You know that the Pasteur Institute in Senegal is already manufacturing yellow fever vaccines, and we are in discussions with them. South Africa was in South Africa just last week and visited the Aspen pharmaceutical site, as well as the Biovac. They are all very strong. They all have very strong capacity and capabilities to manufacture vaccines. We also know that Morocco, Egypt, and Tunisia do have vaccine manufacturing capabilities. Other countries like Ghana have expressed the interest in that, and other countries. So we are not excluding anyone. We just want to be sure that we do this as a collective and look at the entire value chain of vaccine manufacturing in Africa. So consultations are already underway in smaller groups and with donors, with financing mechanisms. You heard perhaps during the April meeting that the Afri-Exim Bank and the African Finance Corporation did sign a memorandum of cooperation to make available resources. The African Development Bank is also very keen to allocate resources in this area. You've now heard this announcement from the MasterCard Foundation that they are allocating resources for this and others. So I think the movement is on. This seems to be like a defining moment that will enable us to change the dynamics. That says we are importing 99% of our vaccines, consuming 25% of vaccines that are produced in the whole world, but producing ourselves only 1% of the vaccines then. So that by 2040, that is the next 20 years from now, we should be able to manufacture at least 60% of our vaccines. I think that is very important, and that requires a very coordinated approach on the continent.
Thank you very much, Dr. John. Ms. Rita, do you have a comment on that issue?
I think he did a wonderful job. Thank you.
All right, so I'll throw the next question to you. It says, if we succeed in this vaccine manufacturing, what are your visions for Africa coming out of this major drive to vaccinate 60% of the population, especially in terms of the increased manufacturing capacity that you hope to build?
John, is that question directed to Dr. Kangasong or?
That is directed to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So obviously it will be a tremendous day at the moment we reach 60% of the population being vaccinated, because that would put us on a sure path to not only greater health security, but enable us to economies to reopen safely and people to get back to work and to their lives. Manufacturing on continent is part of the long-term, medium to long-term security of ensuring everyone's safety in the long term. And so we are very, very committed to working to developing the workforce that is required to actually make this possible.
Thank you. Dr. John, do you have a comment on what kind of Africa you envision coming out of this partnership?
There are three key things that, and Rita touched on this, which collectively we are calling a new public health order for the continent. First and primary is the ability for the continent to manufacture its own vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics. Second is workforce development. You need a competent workforce development that will support all of the above. That is diagnostics, vaccine manufacturing, and therapeutics. Without a competent workforce, there is absolutely no way that the continent can achieve that goal. You also need a competent public health workforce, and I like to underline the word public health workforce, such that we can have responders, rapid responders that can be deployed quickly in hotspots to squash the outbreaks. We have to be able to prepare the continent such that outbreaks do not become pandemics, that we envisage that they will occur, we squash them before they become pandemic. And lastly is public health institutions. Our goal and for the future, emerging from this pandemic, is such that every member state should have its own national public health institute that will work with Africa CDC as a collective of national public health institutions around the Africa CDC to provide that public health security architecture to fight further outbreaks there. That is what we want to achieve, and we believe that this partnership will enable us to begin to prepare for that. That is, win the current battles, but prepare for the next battle.
Thank you very much. The next question that we have is coming from Capital FM, and they say, how will the vaccine distribution work in member states, especially in Kenya? So I'll give that to you, Dr. John.
Yeah, that's a very good question. The first thing to remember is that all countries are eligible, and we will be in the coming days, starting actually on the 14th of this month, start regional consultations, where we'll look at the East African community, address the ministers and say, here we are, let us know what you want to do in your national strategic plan. Remember, we are not going in there to replace countries. We also recognize that there are multiple partners already in the theater trying to help. So we need to look at what the countries, who is doing what in the country underneath their national vaccination plan, and then determine areas that will work with them, either in acquisition of vaccines or the rollout of vaccines. For instance, it could just be that you go to a country and they have X million doses of vaccines and they are struggling to roll them out. Then we build a partnership with them and roll out those vaccines very quickly. It could be that a country needs both vaccines and the ability to roll out the vaccinations. We will support that. Again, our goal, as Rita said, is to enable countries to get to that goalpost of at least 60% of vaccination.
Thank you very much, Dr. John. Our last question then is coming from Groom. He has been struggling to come through to us, but he has finally succeeded, and he has written down his question. So he says, how will this fund support vaccine development in Africa? Are they going to co-develop it with other countries in other continents, or will it only be African? So let me throw that to Rita.
Ms. Wynn, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the first part of it because the sound went out. Could you please repeat it?
All right. So Groom Abate says, how will this fund support vaccine development in Africa? Are you going to co-develop it with other countries in other continents, or will it just be by Africans?
So thank you, Groom, for your question. This fund is not going to be developing vaccines in Africa. This fund is focused on acquiring vaccines for 50 million people and supporting the deployment of vaccinations across the continent. The third part is to actually support the development of the workforce for vaccine manufacturing on the continent, and then of course to strengthen the Africa CDC. So I think your question was really about R&D, and this fund is not for R&D. I just want to clarify that.
Okay, thank you for that. Perhaps before we close, let me give an opportunity to Dr. John to then just comment if vaccine development is going to be in partnership, I mean, when we do start manufacturing, is it going to be in partnership with other countries from outside the continent or just within Africa?
Absolutely, with a partnership. Again, remember we launched on the 12th and 13th of April, what we are calling a partnership for African vaccine manufacturing. The P there is very important, partnership. There's nothing of value that can be done in the 21st century without appropriate partnership, what we are calling trusted partnership. So I think we will be working with all partners that are ready to work with us for the vaccine manufacturing.
All right, thank you very much. It's time now for us to round up and give our panelists a minute or two to summarize the main points that they would like the media to take away today. So let's start with MasterCard Foundation and hand over to Ms. Rita.
Thank you very much, Wynn, and thank you everyone for your questions. So in sum, this initiative is about saving lives and saving livelihoods. It is about hastening the economic recovery of the continent, and it will do 4 things in partnership with the Africa CDC. Acquire vaccines for 50 million people, enable the deployment or the rollout of vaccinations across the continent to millions more, to support the workforce development for vaccine manufacturing in Africa, and to strengthen the Africa CDC and enable it to mount this very significant, very historic vaccination program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. John.
This is a historic moment in our battle against the pandemic, the COVID-19. And we have all said repeatedly that no one is safe until everyone is safe. And we have to win this battle collectively as people on the same planet. So this partnership goes a long way to facilitate the continent and enable it to achieve the goal of vaccinating 60% of its population by the end of 2022. We are extremely grateful to the MasterCard Foundation for always being there and meeting us at a point of need. Let me just say that last year when we launched the partnership to accelerate COVID testing, abbreviated PAC, where at that time in March, the continent as a whole had tested only 300,000 people for COVID. MasterCard came in, supported us with 40 million, and we were able to scale up the testing. I mean, again, in any infectious disease, if you do not test, you will not find. And today, they are meeting us again at a point of need where the continent is lagging behind in our ability to vaccinate our people. And we believe that this is the beginning of an extraordinary journey in not only winning the battle against COVID-19, but strengthening African institutions that will be ready before the next pandemic hit. As the saying goes, you strengthen your health system before you need it. You don't strengthen your health system when you need it. So we are forever grateful to have the MasterCard Foundation.
Thank you very much to our 2 panelists. And that was Ms. Rita Roy, President and Chief Executive Officer of the MasterCard Foundation, as well as Dr. John Nkengasong, the Director of the Africa CDC, talking about that all-important launch that happened today. And it is going under the slogan, saving lives, saving livelihoods in Africa. So it's time now for us to close this press briefing. And let me thank you very much, colleague journalists and communicators that have joined us. Let us continue to meet on Thursdays at 12 noon East African time for the regular Africa CDC media briefings. For now, bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Wynne. Thank you, Dr. John.